This video will be a retrospective of Star Trek The Motion Picture, specifically the premature launch of the refitted Starship Enterprise and Admiral James T. Kirk's enthusiastic push to jump to warp speed, and also what the story means to all of us and what we can learn from that particular part of the movie. Hey all, before I jump in, I have a small ask from this side of the camera. Please smash that like button no matter how long you watch. Hopefully you watch the entire thing. And also consider subscribing to the channel if you are not subscribed. Hey everyone, welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Entertainment and Media. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar. For those of you who don't know me, I felt the need to introduce myself, as Star Trek content typically brings in Trekkies. The algorithm brings in Trekkies. Trekkies are a passionate fan base. And so I wanted to do a retrospective on the premature launch of the refitted USS Enterprise and the premature jump to warp speed that was enthusiastically and dangerously pushed by Admiral James T. Kirk in that movie. And there's a reason why he did that. But I've been away for a while. Those of you who have been subbed to this channel or who are subbed and who have been subbed here for a little while, I've been away. And the reason is I had to polish up my book and finish it. This is my book here, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story. This is available on Amazon now. If you are a Prime member, they will send you a copy very, very quickly. I'm saying that from experience. But this book, I actually published it a couple of months ago, but it was unpolished. And the cover needed to be rejiggered and updated and spruced up a little bit. So that's that. But there was something about this process. During this process, I've learned personally that publishing a book is a complex process, like building a starship and refitting a starship. So as I prematurely pushed my book out there, hoping to do book fairs and go on the speakers circuit, I think that's the right term for it. When I realized that it still needed more work, and that I'd pushed it out there prematurely, I thought back to Star Trek The Motion Picture, starring the original cast. I won't name all of them. You all know who they are. But also Stephen Collins and Persis Kambata. That was directed by Robert Weiss, and it was scored by Jerry Goldsmith. So Star Trek The Motion Picture, I think that was released, well, I'll just say the late 1970s. I'm a 70s baby. It might have actually come out in 1976, which is the year that I was born. I'm dating myself. But my most vivid memories of the Star Trek movies, that original set, was seeing The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan at the movie theater, and seeing Star Trek III, The Search for Spock at the movie theater, watching those space battles, and hearing that soundtrack by James Horner, and then having the VHS movies, and then just watching those movies over and over and over and over again. I have most of the lines from those movies memorized, even some of the Klingon. I can speak some Klingon. I won't do it now, but maybe I'll do it in the future. But I'm saying this to say that I have vivid memories. Well, I have some memories being a youngster and having a coffee mug at our house of the motion picture, and seeing that picture on the side of the mug of Admiral Kirk, Mr. Spock, and Dr. McCoy on one side, and then on the other side, Executive Officer Decker and Lieutenant Ilea. And I remember Persis Kambata's bald head, and as a youngster thinking, okay, that looks odd. Why does this woman have a bald head? Anyway, there was a scene. I didn't appreciate the movie. It wasn't, I don't think it was as well received as The Wrath of Khan or Star Trek 3 or Star Trek 6, the Undiscovered Country. It wasn't received as well. I don't think a lot of people got it initially. And when I was older, an older youth, and I went back and watched the motion picture, I didn't quite get it because it wasn't as spectacular as Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. There was no Ricardo Montalban. There were no photon torpedoes flying all over the place. There was no Mr. Spock sacrificing himself for the needs of the many. It was more of an intellectual piece, it was more of a thought piece in terms of Star Trek. It was more of a what's the word I'm looking for in terms of story. It was more of a, I can't think of the word I want to describe that story, but it was more sciency. Maybe I guess that's the best way I could say it. It was more sciency. It was less melodramatic. No battles except when the Klingons try to attack V'ger in the beginning, but it was just it wasn't an action-packed good versus evil type of movie. And I didn't understand it when I initially started watching it as an older youngster, but as I as I became an adult and I watched it over and over and over again, I started to appreciate the motion picture and I started to understand it more. But there's one scene I want to focus on in the motion picture. Well, there's one sequence in the motion picture which I want to focus on for this video. Okay, I probably spent too much time in the previous section talking about that, but as it relates to my book and just making something and creating things, the initial phase of the movie stood out to me. And so the Enterprise from the television series, it got refit. Okay, so it got updated and all these new systems were added. It got modernized. And Matt Decker, Commander Decker, I keep wanting to say Colonel, but is it Matt Decker or Will Decker? Okay, so the movie was released in 1979, and it's Will Decker. Will Decker, not Matt Decker. I think Matt Decker was in the Planet Eater episode, but it was Will Decker played by Stephen Collins. Okay, and I also watched a very, very fascinating documentary on how the motion picture was made. That's a different story. But early on in the movie, Admiral Kirk, V'ger's coming to Earth, taking out Klingons, taking out star bases. Everybody's afraid, and Admiral Kirk wrestles back command of the Enterprise to refit Enterprise, but he's not familiar with the technology. Will Decker has shepherded the ship through its refit, so he knows all the systems, the warp drive, how the phasers work, everything. It's his baby, basically, and Kirk wrestles it from him. That's a subplot of the movie. But the Enterprise launches. Well, before it launches, Commander Sonak and another officer unfortunately die on the transporters because the transporters weren't ready. And as a matter of fact, as Kirk and Scotty are traveling in the little shuttle pod, he says, sir, the ship's not ready. It needs this, it needs that, and then he reassures Kirk. Okay, well, Kirk says we need to launch, and Scotty says, okay, well, she'll launch on time. She'll launch when we need her to launch. So anyway, so that the transporter's not working, and then the ship launches. It makes that beautiful launch from space dock, and then once they're out into space, Kirk puts his foot down and he says, look, we need to go to warp speed. We need to rendezvous with this visitor before it gets to Earth. And I remember that scene because there was a black gentleman with Scotty down near the intermix chamber, and they're running simulations. And they said, all right, we're ready. Let's go to warp speed. So Mr. Sulu takes the Enterprise to warp speed. It looks successful, but coming out of warp, they get sucked into a wormhole. Okay, and they all, their image gets, they're rocking back and forth like this. The Enterprise is rocking back and forth like this, and they're in some kind of space time continuum where they're all looking kind of smeared, and their voices sound kind of their voices sound deranged and stretched, and they're headed towards this asteroid. And Kirk says, "Fire phasers." No one else can come up with a solution for what to do. And Kirk says, "Okay, we'll just fire the phasers, destroy the asteroid, and we'll be out of the wormhole." And then Decker says, "No, delay that order." And he goes to Chekhov and says, "Fire the photon torpedoes." And Kirk's like, "What are you doing?" And then once they destroy the asteroid, Kirk says, "Why was my order delayed?" And Decker says, "Well, sir, the in this modernization of the Enterprise, the phaser banks have been channeled through the warp drive. So when the warp drive shut off, the phaser banks shut off. So we had to use the photon torpedoes." And so Kirk almost killed everybody. Okay. And it's a powerful scene. And he prematurely jumped to warp drive because he wanted to meet V'ger out in space before V'ger came to the Earth. But in prematurely jumping to warp drive and forcing that situation, he almost destroyed the ship and killed everybody. Now, the cool part was Spock shows up afterwards, and they have scenes where they have a scene where Spock is going over his calculations with Scotty, and they're near the intermix chamber, and they come up with the right calculations and the right algorithms, and they're able to successfully jump to warp drive. And there's a very, very cool digital rendering of that of engineering. I forget the guy's name. I'll leave the link below in the description box. By the way, I used to dream about being on the Enterprise. I used to watch Star Trek II and Star Trek III so much that I used to actually dream and fantasize about being out in space on that Enterprise. And I loved that version of the bridge. It was homey. It was comfortable. The seats had the seats. The captain's chair had cushions. They all had cushions. And it broke my heart in Star Trek III when they blew that ship up. But that bridge, I loved that bridge versus the bridge on the NCC 1701 versus the NCC-1. No, let me do it the right way. The NCC-1701. I loved that bridge. I loved that ship versus the NCC-1701-A, which they built at the end of Star Trek IV. I loved everything about the first one. That was my favorite starship. But I'm saying this to say, I went off the tracks there, but I'm saying this to say that what was powerful about that scene was that the ship wasn't ready, okay? And that premature jump to warp drive almost destroyed the ship and killed all the people on it. And as I was working to finish my book and I prematurely pushed it out there, I thought, wow, I did the same thing. I prematurely launched and I almost ruined the entire thing. Okay, I apologize for rambling the way that I did. As you can see, I get excited about Star Trek. I grew up as a Trekkie, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine was my favorite television series, even though I did enjoy some aspects of The Next Generation and Voyager as well. But I get excited about the initial cast and the movies and the television series. But I'm saying all of this to say that as I was going through my authorship journey, and I'm a young author, I thought back to the launch of the Enterprise in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and we see that video games get recalled. Food products get recalled. Sometimes unfortunately, airplanes are sometimes sold and they go into flight. Commercial airliners go into flight and they're not ready, or there's some defect because someone launched the project too early and they didn't catch something. that happens quite a bit. That happens in life, and that's a part of life, and that's a part of production, and it's a part of creating things. And I think it's fascinating on YouTube. One of the things that I enjoy is watching the backstories to movies like Star Trek and Terminator and Alien, not just sci-fi movies, but just the creation of these works of art in general. It's often not a straight line, and it's often a very, very squiggly line. And sometimes they're working under very, very hard deadlines, and sometimes the original plans get completely trashed for a new plan. Sometimes a new director comes in. Sometimes an actor drops out. Sometimes the movie has to be scored within 2 weeks by the composer. So creating things is hard, and I think, in the movie, we set these deadlines. In the movie, Kirk wanted to meet V'ger out in space before it got to Earth, but sometimes in this world we set deadlines for things, and we launch things prematurely. So if and when you can, take your time creating your art or whatever it is you're creating, whether it's a video game or a commercial airliner or building a bridge, whatever. It's important to take the time to build it correctly. What do you think about any of this? Did you enjoy Star Trek the motion picture? Did that scene stand out to you? Did any of the scenes in that movie stand out to you? Have you ever created something, whether it be a book or a piece of music or a movie or a video game or a vehicle or something? Have you ever been a part of the creative process? Once again, this is my book, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story. It is for sale now on Amazon. And if you are a Prime member, they will send you the hard copy or the paperback edition very, very quickly. And if you order right now, you can get one of them or both of them, or how many that you want, you can get them before Christmas. And I will be discussing this more as I make more content. And I may be coming to a location near you to present the book in person. Hey, everyone, two things. So earlier on in the body of the video, I said jump to warp drive. It should be jump to warp speed. You don't jump to warp drive. The warp drive is where the warp speed comes from. Okay, so jump to warp speed. Now, the other thing is, I talked about my book. I didn't say anything about it, just that I'm going to be very, very brief. It's a story about what sports teach you about life, success, and failure as a young person. Okay, so it's a creative nonfiction piece based upon real life events and based upon some real people. Names have been changed, but it's a piece about what sports teach you about life, success, and failure as a young person. So with that, everyone, this is Big Discussions 76, Entertainment and Media. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. Please like, share, and subscribe, especially if you are new. I typically haven't done this in a while. I typically have an entire spiel about a newsletter. I'll leave the link to my newsletter. I haven't done that recently because I've been so busy trying to finish this book. And I sometimes I mention my Cash App and my PayPal. Those are in the description box below. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for watching. Please leave any thoughts or comments in the comment section below. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Live long and prosper. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.